You got people that are resentful towards her. But it's really not about her, guys. It's about what she represents. Before she ever came along, there were a lot of outstanding basketball players who happened to be black females that was doing their thing on the WNBA level. And they never got this kind of shine. This girl, the Golden Goose, comes along.
Number of men and women that actually get to live out their dream of playing a professional sport. And we have grown-ass men and women out here doing whatever they can to try to make sure that does not happen. That is the weirdest thing in the world, but it is what it is, and I'm glad that Caitlin has a great head on her shoulders.
Something is happening in the WNBA that a lot of people don't want to talk about directly, but a Washington-based attorney just did, and it's setting off alarm bells across the league. Caitlin Clark isn't a rookie fighting for minutes anymore. She's the face of the Indiana Fever, and by most measures, the single biggest economic engine women's basketball has ever had. Since she entered the league, engagement numbers have reportedly jumped by more than 600%. League subscription numbers have climbed over 400%. The Fever's franchise valuation has reportedly tripled. This isn't hype. These are numbers pulled from ticket sales, merchandise, and media reports covering her impact. And yet, according to one attorney who's now speaking out publicly, all of that success has come with a disturbing side effect. A level of physical targeting on the court that he argues the league has quietly allowed to continue. That attorney is Sean Mulcahy, founder of a Washington, D.C., based consulting and advocacy firm called Origin Advocacy. He spent close to 15 years working in government, including time with several well-known conservative lawmakers and inside the Trump administration. He recently penned a piece for the Wall Street Journal laying out his case, and then went further in a television interview where he dropped a number that's now spreading fast across sports media. According to Mulcahy's research, Clark absorbed roughly 17% of all flagrant or hard fouls across the entire WNBA during her rookie season. Read that again, one player, responsible for nearly a fifth of the league's most dangerous contact. He says that rate is more than double what any of her peers experienced. And his argument isn't just, the refs missed some calls. His argument is that this pattern, sustained and repeated, starts to look less like physical basketball and more like targeted conduct, the kind that in any other workplace could trigger a legal complaint. That's the word he keeps coming back to, workplace. Because under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, a hostile work environment isn't limited to office buildings and cubicles. It applies anywhere someone is employed, and Mulcahy argues the WNBA court qualifies. If a protected characteristic like race is found to be a factor in how an employee, in this case, a professional athlete, is treated on the job, and the employer allows a pattern of harm to continue, that's not just a public relations problem. That's potentially a federal one. Now, to be clear, this isn't just one outside voice making noise for attention. Analysts have pointed out that broadcast commentary during Fever games has repeatedly flagged plays that go uncalled. Rebecca Lobo, a former WNBA player turned ESPN analyst, has said on air that officiating around Clark appears inconsistent with how contact is typically penalized elsewhere in the league. When you combine that kind of commentary from inside the basketball world with an attorney's statistical breakdown from outside it, you get a story that's bigger than just game tape. So why is this happening? Mulcahy points to something other people around the league have already said out loud. Shortly after Clark was drafted, reigning MVP A'ja Wilson addressed the attention Clark was receiving and stated publicly that she believes race is part of the equation, going as far as to say it frustrates her when people deny that race plays a role. Statements like that, made by a respected veteran and multiple-time champion, add real weight to the conversation. They suggest this isn't only about basketball strategy or a rookie needing to toughen up. There's a deeper current running underneath it, one involving fame, endorsements, media attention, and yes, resentment. And look, on a human level, some of that resentment is understandable. Imagine spending years grinding at the highest level of your sport, winning championships, being named MVP, and then watching a second-year player arrive and immediately surpass you in endorsements, media coverage, and global visibility. That's a bitter pill for anyone to swallow. Jealousy in that scenario isn't shocking. It's human nature. But human nature doesn't excuse letting that resentment translate into on-court targeting that puts someone's health and career at risk. That's where the story shifts from tough competition to something the league needs to actually address. If this kind of deep dive breakdown is what you come to this channel for, go ahead and hit subscribe right now, because we're covering every angle of this story as it develops. And if you've got a take on whether this is really about targeting, jealousy, race, or all of it combined, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Here's what makes this situation so uncomfortable for the league office. The fix, at least on paper, sounds almost embarrassingly simple. Officials could start calling games the way the rulebook already says they should. No new legislation required. No press conference needed. Just call the fouls that are already fouls. And yet, according to critics, that hasn't consistently happened. Whether due to inconsistency, hesitation, or simply not wanting to be seen as protecting one specific player over others. Compare that to how other leagues have handled similar situations in the past. When a young LeBron James started absorbing brutal repeated contact early in his career, the NBA didn't shrug it off. Officiating adjusted. A clear message was sent. Elite marketable talent gets protected, both for competitive fairness and for the league's own financial interest. Whether or not you agree with how that played out, the intent was obvious: protect the assets that keep the business running. Critics argue the WNBA has taken the opposite approach with Clark, treating her instead as fair game, even as she becomes the biggest financial driver the league has ever had. And that disconnect is exactly what's fueling all of this outside attention. Federal involvement in professional and amateur sports isn't unprecedented, either. We've seen government pressure applied during baseball's steroid era, in the Larry Nassar and USA Gymnastics scandal, in NFL concussion investigations, and more recently in NCAA swimming and gymnastics cases. So when an attorney with a background inside federal government starts using terms like hostile workplace in the same sentence as a league's biggest star, it's reasonable to expect people in Washington to take notice. That's really the underlying tension here. This story checks almost every box that turns a sports controversy into a national one. Money, safety, gender, and race, all wrapped around one of the most recognizable athletes in the country. What could have stayed a basketball-only conversation is now bleeding into cultural and political commentary far beyond the court. And predictably, fans are split right down the middle. Clark's supporters are frustrated, saying the pattern is obvious and the league needs to protect her before something serious happens. Critics on the other side argue that physical aggressive defense is simply part of professional basketball and that singling out these fouls as targeted is overblown. Then there's a third group, people who may not even follow basketball closely, but who are drawn to the drama, sharing clips online with captions questioning how certain hits are still being allowed. That online attention is part of what's amplifying the pressure. Every viral clip, every uncalled foul, every quote from a player or analyst adds another layer to a story that keeps growing whether the league engages with it or not. At the center of it all is a fairly straightforward question that the WNBA still hasn't answered clearly. If Caitlin Clark truly is responsible for a historic surge in the league's visibility and revenue, why does it appear, at least to critics, that she's receiving less protection on the court than players with far less individual impact on the bottom line? Supporters of Clark say the answer is uncomfortable but simple: jealousy and a reluctance to be seen as favoring one player, even when the data suggests she may need it most. Whether or not this ever escalates into an actual legal case, one thing seems certain: the pressure isn't going away. Attorneys don't raise terms like hostile workplace casually, and press statements that dodge the issue tend to draw just as much scrutiny as silence itself. The longer the league avoids directly addressing the pattern, the more attention, media, legal, and political, it's likely to attract. That's where things stand right now, but this story is moving fast, and there's a lot more to unpack in the days ahead. If you want to stay ahead of every twist in this Caitlin Clark story, and everything else happening across the WNBA, make sure you're subscribed to WNBA updates, and tap that notification bell so you don't miss the next breakdown. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video.